channel. Hello, hi. You know what? Not a long intro. Let's get right into it. Okay, so we all know what a trigger is, right? You know, it's one of those terms nowadays, especially on TikTok, especially on social media, where it's like the self-help community really loves to take those terms, trigger, trauma, narcissist, just using it self-help, quote unquote, trend, even though mental health and self-help shouldn't be a trend. That should be a lifestyle, you know, always encouraging and, you know, trying to heal and stuff like that sort. And of course that word too, healing is used so often. But of course I love how, you know, those terms and these practices are being encouraged, you know, nowadays more and more. My worry is that like they're just being thrown around so much that we just don't really know what they are truly and how to cope with them, you know, because I'm one to say I use the word triggered not even daily, like hourly. Trauma, trigger, and healing. I use those words like so much, right? And sometimes I hope I don't use it too much in the sense to water it down or undermine the severity of it, you know? So today we're gonna focus on specifically triggers, right? And like what they are and what to do if we experience them, right? So mind you, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just someone who has been triggered a lot in their life, you know what I'm saying? And from my definition, my personal definition, a trigger is when you honestly relive a traumatic moment in the present. It's like where you relive a traumatic moment from the past in the present. And that's like one of the ways I like to say it, because sometimes of course there's small triggers, like say a song reminds you of someone, or like seeing someone who's hurt you in public makes you feel anxious, scared, you know, those are like triggers, of course. I say in the moment when you're triggered, you feel everything you felt the first time you've gotten hurt, if that makes sense. You know, say if someone broke your heart, that first initial pain, say if you see them in like a couple of months or something, you might relive and relive that experience of that heartbreak in that moment again, but in the present. So story time y'all didn't ask for. So the reason why I was drawn to talk about triggers today, because mind you, I've been on my healing journey for a little bit here. You know, I'm a little bit of a seasoned healer. I'm not a master, but I've been on this self-help journey, self-healing journey, self-discovery journey for about, I would say, yeah, senior year of high school is when I really started delving into like self-help books and reading and all that sort of stuff. And so I say this because I'm a seasoned healer. You know, I've gone through some things, healed through some things, been triggered, re-triggered, traumatized for the first time, all these sorts of things, right? And so the past couple of weeks, I went on a trip and hung out with some friends, hung out with some people, and I came across some occasions where I was extremely triggered, like to the point where like I haven't been triggered like that in a long time. And I was just like just kind of triggered where you're overwhelmed, you can't breathe. It's just like you're overwhelmed with whatever it is. But I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it is in those moments as quickly as I usually can. So I was like I had those thoughts where I'm like, I am not as healed as I thought. My healing journey is reverting. I'm just not as far along in my journey as I was. Oh my God, I'm like, I can't believe I'm, you know, going back on my patterns and whatever. And it took some time to unpack and see what was going on, right? Because typically, like I said, throughout my journeys also, I'm very good at like delving into my shadows. I'm not afraid of the dark. You know what I'm saying? I felt after like feeling it and still feeling the effects of it to this day, like that overwhelming week, I talked to some friends, talked to my sister, talked to my therapist to really unpack and see what was the root. And of course, I listened to podcasts, and one podcast in particular, I'm gonna find it and link it and maybe put a picture of it. They were talking about how when sometimes, I like to call it when the past comes to visit, you know, when you're re-triggered or whatever. What this girl on the podcast said, she said, don't focus on the problem, focus on the pattern. And I was like, oh my God. And then there's a couple of questions she had us answer for reflection. But one thing that really caught my attention was when she said, what pattern from childhood am I mimicking? And that struck me because I was like, oh my God. So essentially my pattern that I found out was when I feel like my emotions are being discarded, or I feel like I'm not being considered in the moment, I feel unlovable, not good enough. If I was good enough, they'd be paying attention to me. If I was good enough, I wouldn't be being hurt right now. People are always trying to hurt me. Always, those are the kind of thoughts I would feel. That's what I kind of felt last week. But that reminded me of a previous trauma I experienced in college where I felt completely disregarded. My emotions weren't, like I wasn't good enough, blah, blah, blah. But that stems from childhood where I felt, say when I was a child, like my feelings weren't really considered too much. I'm just a child, you know, whatever, I'm just a child, I'll get over it. Like, so when I would be angry, upset, sad, my parents would kind of just, you know, not really take my feelings seriously, not help me emotionally, like not emotionally console me, not like help me work through the feelings. They would kind of just be like, like you'll be all right, you'll be all right. My pattern was that I would always just run away. Like I would have to go in my room, isolate, and just like wallow and just brew and just, you know, just, that's why I'm a very introspective and analytical thinker, because I'm always in my head ever since I was a child. And so say if when I'm a child, when I was in my room for a little bit, my parents would come later and be like, oh, you're still upset, like you'll be okay, like come eat, you know, not really like asking if I'm okay or like emotionally console me. Like I said, just kind of like left me with the lingering, my feelings don't matter. If I do get sad, like I'm the issue, like why are you upset? Like very invalidated. Bringing that into my adulthood, where I experienced like nothing of course happened. Of course sometimes things can happen which can trigger you, but for me it was like minuscule things that just triggered that childhood pattern of me needing to run away. Like I needed to leave because I felt like, oh my gosh, my feelings aren't being considered right now, and that means I'm unlovable. That means my feelings don't matter. That means I'm the problem. If I was better, this wouldn't be happening. I have to go. Nothing happened, but it was a situation that reminded me of the feelings I've experienced when I was a child, you know? Things that made me feel unlovable, things that made me feel not good enough, things that just made me feel like my feelings did not matter. After realizing all those things, one of the ways I do shadow work, which I'm definitely gonna do a video on shadow work, is that I kind of talk to my inner child. And for me, like I'm kind of different. Like I have like 5-year-old me, I have a 4th grade-year-old me who I, you know, communicate with. There's a college me, and then there's like me. Because I guess they've always had, they have their own phases where they've, you know, had certain situations happen where they need different kinds of, you know, emotional support. I was talking to the 4th grade me and not just asking, you know, what do you need? What do you need from me in this moment? And those kind of questions. What do you need from me in this moment? What are you trying to tell me? Because the reason why I was struggling with these triggers for the past couple of weeks without, especially I was like, why am I not letting this go? I thought I was more healed than this. Like that was me kind of disregarding my inner child. I learned that from a YouTube video, which I'm trying to find the link for it, which is really good. They were saying how like me pushing off like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna drown myself in affirmations, drown myself in podcasts. I'm better than this. Why am I being triggered about nothing? You know, that was my mentality. And then the video was saying, if you do those kind of things rather than listen to yourself, that's you kind of doing what you've experienced when you were a child to yourself. Me pushing me off like, no, your feelings don't matter. You're tripping. You're really tripping. Like, why are you tripping right now? Like my little inner child's like, hey, I need some help. And I'm like, you're tripping. Let's just meditate. Let's just, you know, without delving into the root of it. So I talked to me, and I apologized for not listening to her. I apologized for not validating her, not making her feel seen in her, not making her feel like she was important, and just really converse with her, apologizing to myself for, instead of listening to myself and like of course feeling the feelings, it was so hard to do. That's why I couldn't. I was like freaking out. It's like I can't deal because it was really overwhelming. But simply having that quote unquote conversation with her and like hearing her, that Isabel that felt unlovable, like her feelings don't matter, all of that, it was insane how fast like the anxiety in my chest dissipated. You know, like I felt like, okay, it was like literally she got like some peace, which is like, it's all of these are like mental, like visual, like what is visualizations you can have with yourself and imagination, but like just doing that communication and like really showing yourself that you care about yourself, and like in the different parts of yourself that aren't healed yet, really showing yourself that you care about yourself enough to communicate with yourself and all of that. It's just so, I guess, healing. Because some people may like hear this and be like, what, you're just like talking to yourself, talking to different versions of yourself. But like that's what inner child work is, and that's what reparenting is, when you didn't hear the things you needed to hear growing up, but you're telling it to yourself now. Because who's gonna do it? You know, yeah, you can go to therapy, which is great. That's also a way of showing up for yourself. But sometimes you have to like really show up for who needs help the most within you. Is it your child self? Is it your mid-age self if you're older? Is it what part of yourself needs support and love in that moment? You know, that's what I really needed to figure out and delve into. It's getting kind of heavy. So after I gave her what she needed, the lingering, triggering thoughts still kind of go throughout my head a little bit, you know, throughout the week. They linger, but then we can't control our thoughts, apparently. Like, I know I've always heard different things, different places, but that really helped soothe me a little bit more. Like, you can't control your thoughts, but I can control how I react to them. Another definition of trigger is like reacting to thoughts. And that's what I would do. Like, I'm a master of like making up scenarios in my head that hurt my feelings. Like, I do that so much. It's so bad. But I'm actively practicing how to not put too much emotional charge on the thoughts I don't like. Because one thing about me, if I see a thought I don't like and I start thinking negatively, I'm gonna start freaking out. I'm like, why am I thinking like this? This is so rude. I hate that. And like, I make the thoughts seem like they're really gonna happen or something. But realizing that sometimes I can't control my thoughts, but I can be like, hey, ooh, I don't like that thought. Go away. You know, kind of just doing that sort of thing. And realizing that you can't control your thoughts, but you can control how you react to them and how you act in real life in accordance to them, you know? So this past 2 weeks have been just like everything you've heard in this video is what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks only. So it's been like overwhelming. enlightening, and just empowering to see also how far I've come. In regard to, we talked about what a trigger is to me. You know, I feel like it's our present selves reliving pain from the past, you know, and how one way, because there's millions and millions of ways to work on, you know, triggers, but the one way that really helped me deal with an overwhelming trigger this week was, of course, talking it through with people you trust, therapists, you know, unpacking it, and then finding out how you felt and label it. Like I said, I felt unlovable. I felt not good enough. I felt like people are always trying to hurt me. If I was this way, then they would treat me better, you know, stuff like that, right? And seeing, and of course with that question, what pattern am I mimicking from childhood, and see where those labels can fit into how you acted when you were a child. It's crazy how our childhood really does impact everything we do, the good, the bad, you know, people-pleasing aspects to our personality and our hobbies and likes, you know, this different spectrum. But, and then if you're up to, you know, the kind of shadow work where you talk to your inner child, like one-on-one, or write a letter to yourself, or write out, I'm giving myself this, I'm giving myself that, you know, listen to the part of yourself that is screaming that I'm not lovable. Listen to the part of yourself that's screaming I'm not good enough. And ask yourself, what can you do for yourself in that moment that you weren't given as a child? Because I know a lot of people typically have a lot of stuff come up. They might cry, they might just feel a release, they might feel extra triggered because it's some part of yourself that may have not been ever addressed in their life, you know? So triggers can really be very enlightening, but all in all, it does hurt a lot to be triggered. It's a chance for us to work through it and give ourselves the needs that we never were given growing up, you know? So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope this wasn't, you know, triggering to bring up, you know, different topics of childhood traumas and stuff. You know, I hope this gave you a little peace of mind that it's, of course, the trigger is always, it's temporary. Being triggered is temporary. I hope you know that. Everyone gets triggered. So you're not alone. We're going through this for a reason. So I'm trying to remember that. Hope you remember that too. And thank you for watching. So see you in the next one. Bye.